Hi, I'm MJBZ.
And I'm Katrina, and welcome to Two Cats Writing.
Yes, this is the Two Cats Writing Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about speed of book releases, both in traditional publishing and in indie publishing. And when we say speed of release, we're saying for instance, in traditional publishing, we're talking about speed from contract to release or offer and release. And Katrina can probably talk more about what that means in indie publishing. But so how do you want to get started? How should we get started with this?
Well, one of the things that I know we've talked about a little bit is how fast your publisher specifically is working to get your book out, which is absolutely wonderful. But we've also talked about the fact that I conversely have been known to release multiple books, sometimes multiple novels in the same year. And that is a difference.
Well, it's not like that can't happen in traditional publishing, but if it's happening, it's because you have multiple deals going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so your release dates are, staggered out throughout the year. Like certainly plenty of traditionally published authors have multiple releases in a year. However, that time between contract and release is the thing.
Right.
So you might not realize from the outside how long it's been since a contract was signed
and
or an offer was made.
And that's an important part that I think everybody should be aware of. Just because an indie can release multiple books in a year, it doesn't mean that it can't be done traditionally. But the other thing that I think we're going to circle through as we're talking today is, in order to do it right, it still needs to meet the same standards as you're expected to go through. If you're releasing as an indie, it can't be haphazard. It can't be, hi, I finished the book and hit publish. I mean, it can be done, but if you're trying to
don't do that.
Don't do that. But I will share a little bit about how I was able to do that and how I've been able to do that. So, for starters, you signed last year, right?
I signed, so the offer on my debut came in November of 2024, and I didn't sign the contract until I think it was early March of 2025, because there were negotiations to go back and forth between the publisher and my agent and my agency and their lawyers and so on. There's lawyers everywhere. And so in March, I signed the contract, and then my debut was at that point set to release less than a year later. So that, just about a year later, actually, now that I think about it, it was March. So March to March. But that's extremely fast for traditional publishing. Typically, and it's only because I'm with a mid-sized independent publisher, a mid-sized indie, not a big five publisher, where the publisher is literally a guy, a guy runs it, and they publish a certain number of titles a year. They have a smaller number of titles that they publish a year. The YA imprint, I think, does. Actually, I can't remember how many it is a year, so I don't want to say a wrong number. But I believe there's 2 acquiring editors in the YA side at Page Street YA. So it's, how many books those 2 people can handle between themselves. And because it's an indie publisher, they can be light on their feet. Their timeline is really compressed compared to my friends who have big 5 deals. We're talking minimum 2 years, I would say, from when that book gets signed or announced or sometimes even signing the contract can take a very long time, and they'll already be in edits by the time they even get a contract. Just because with a huge publisher like that, there's so many people who have to sign off on everything, like because it's not just it's not just your editor and their imprint and whoever is approving acquisitions for that imprint. It's also like the publisher, and then they often have a parent company in, sometimes overseas. Like a lot of the big five publishers are owned ultimately by big foreign companies even. And but there's just a lot more steps that everything has to go through. Those publishers are working on many, many, many more books than my publisher does per year, and putting out more per year. Every stage of the process has to go through more people and more approvals, whereas like I'm working with a relatively small team at Page Street. I've always felt like I kind of have the best of both worlds by being with a mid-sized indie, which is like the best of both worlds in terms of traditional publishing, because I have the fast turnaround and like relatively compressed publishing schedule of an indie publisher with the distribution of a big five, because they have a deal with Macmillan for distribution. So that feels pretty great to me. That said, with the timeline that compressed, that means like your developmental edits have to be done a lot faster. Like everything that's your job as an author is done a lot faster than it would be with a big five. Though, as I say that, I have heard horror stories from people whose editors were so swamped at their big five publisher that, things got delayed and delayed. Like the timeline was delayed from what they were originally told, and then they find themselves with like a 2-week turnaround for edits like over the holidays or something that wasn't how it was scheduled. Whereas, my publisher is able to like pretty easily meet the schedule. Like I've never had them be like really far behind on something on their end, and I've never been behind. And so far it's been like a really smooth and efficient process. But that said, like that 1 year for a book is super fast in traditional publishing. Like that's lightning speed, and not something that you should expect, especially if you're going for a big, like signing with a big five publisher for your book. Or I can't speak to how fast like smaller independent publishers work, like whether or not being smaller makes things go even faster than what we have at Page Street, or whether with an even smaller staff that actually like makes things take a little longer. I don't know actually, and I'd have to ask some folks at small indies.
I've actually spoken to a few, and it's kind of a mixed bag there. It really, in that case, depends on the publisher. I have seen some publishers that have a nice little train going with the, getting the process moving right from start. And this is, when I say I have seen some publishers, it's through the proxy or through the lens of other people's discussions with me, not as though I have worked with them.
Right.
I did have one that I was going to submit to, and that several friends of mine kept trying to drag me into writing with, and I ended up hitting a downswing on my mental health, and trying to commit to a new project was not going to work at that time. But what I saw out of that particular small press at the time, they were very small, and they were churning. Well, they were quite determined they weren't going to stay very small, so I'll give them that. But they absolutely had a pipeline in their case where they would have, as soon as one book got into the editing pipeline, if you will, process, They had a copy editor type stuff, and then one that did developmental. And so you go from one to the next, like in succession, pretty quick. They were able to turn a whole novel around through at least, I think it was 2 different editors within a couple of months, if everybody was on track, which is impressive. Considering that right behind it was a whole nother book. So it's not like they were just editing one book at a time. This editor was editing this book, but the next editor was editing the book before them or the book after, depending on how it was organized. And then you moved into the next step of the pipeline, and it was kind of like they had conveyor belt. They were trying for a virtual conveyor belt. And
I mean, I would say that's the way it works at Page Street too. Like, you know, because they're working on multiple titles at once, but everything's going to like different stages at their allotted moment.
I think it's fun to watch. I love the efficiency when they've got it locked in. And if I were to ever consider seriously signing with anybody, that's the kind of thing I want to see. I want to see that kind of efficiency, that kind of teamwork, because I think that's crucial. Especially the other thing that I'm loving is that despite the fact that your team is moving very fast, they're not forgetting anything.
Oh yeah, no, they're fantastic, and like I'm really impressed with what they're able to do. And they do, you know, they have they have staff who are like Page Street staff, and then they do work with some freelancers as well. Like I'm pretty sure that my copy editor was freelance. I loved them. So I have, you know, like my acquiring editor is my developmental editor, and, you know, I'll do developmental edits and line edits, and like scene to scene edits and line edits with them. And then, and they have like a very solid timeline, like paced out for exactly like how long it's going to take. And, you know, I'm contracted to have to turn in my edits in a certain amount of time as well. Like the author has to be fast too in this kind of scenario. And then it'll, you know, they'll eventually, like, they'll go to a copy editor next, and then like the design phase is going on like throughout, like at a certain point, and I'm getting updates on that, and you know, eventually it goes to like past pages, eventually it goes to copy edits. Like there's or not copy edits, so proofreading. I mean, that's the last step. But they've been really great. They have like a window for when their marketing for each book starts. And so like I started working with the marketing and publicity team, I think it was 6 months out from my release, I think. Yeah. And there's there's been a timeline for everything. I had a I had a meeting with the publicity and marketing team at the time, you know, at that point, at the beginning of that period, and we talked through everything we thought we were going to do, and then I got like a timeline for like notes and things for like when we were going to do certain things. And I would say that's like the one department that I feel is like really like rushing to like promote so many books at once. But they've been so great. They're fantastic and responsive, and I've had a terrific experience with everybody at Page Street. So
that's wonderful.
I highly recommend them. They don't have, like, currently, I don't think they have an imprint that publishes the type of books that you write, Catrina, for instance, because I think they have like their main, like, original Page Street publishing, which is mostly like things like cookbooks and craft books, and like originally this is the kind of thing they did, like coffee table type books, you know, like really beautifully produced books, photography books, like things like that. And then they started their children's imprint and like YA imprint, and they've just They just have a few books signed. I think a few. I know of one for sure. For their new, like, adult, like, horror imprint that they're starting. Like, they're like gradually moving into other genres and things. But like, I think in a smart way, like slowly, like adding a thing and letting that get established and letting that get settled and figuring out how well it's going to do and what they want to do with it before they add something new. So
Mhm.
I feel like
Often,
they
any
know what they're doing.
business that tries to grow too fast usually ends up in a very bad place. So that sounds
Yeah.
like they're being properly deliberate, which is wonderful.
Yes, they are wonderful, and it's very fast turnaround for traditional publishing. And that is not what you should expect at all with Big Five. So why don't you talk more about how you, like, your own personal timeline, because you just basically get to work on whatever timeline you want.
Yes, I do. And it's whatever time I can complete a thing. But one of the things that I find a lot of people who first start out with indie do that is not a small mistake is that they literally, I don't know how many times people have come to me and said, can I get you to give me a hand with this publishing process, answer my questions, kind of hold my hand through this? And of course, I'm ready to help and I'm excited. And I start talking about editors and newsletters and all the things that really make a difference in a long-term process. And a couple days later, they come back to me and say, never mind, I hit publish.
Oh. Oh, I understand the impulse and the impatience and just wanting to get the work out there. I guess maybe that's like the risk, isn't it? Like in traditional publishing, I'm held back by others.
Yep.
Whereas you're left at the mercy of your own impulses in indie publishing.
Yeah. When I had everything going smoothly and everything was I was hitting bestseller lists and things, it was it was very much a train, if you will, much like what your conveyor belt thing that the publishers try to do. You put the book, you finish the draft, you put it on the shelf for a couple of days, or if you have a good arrangement, you send it immediately to your editor. Depends on the situation. And then from there, it immediately needs to go through editing. And I'm not just talking about beta reading, and beta reading does make a difference. And if you have no budget and you really want to get your book out there, you really think you're going to be able to make something out of it, as long as you know you still need an editor, it can theoretically be put out there. I have seen people do it. Is it the most recommended? It's not. And the biggest reason it's not is because you are going to fill in gaps that other people are going to catch. Your brain says, I put this there. And then your editor says, well, you might have thought you did.
But this does not come off to the reader who isn't inside your brain.
Exactly. And that's to be expected. We're excited. These are our babies we're putting out into the world. So you have to get a second set of eyes. You want that second set of eyes to be a professional set of eyes. Your beta readers, your best friends, they're all going to give you feedback. But I have learned, especially when you're coming from friends or family, they're trying to not hurt your feelings.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you also, I would say, and this could be expanded into a larger conversation at some point, but when you're talking about getting feedback from people, like there is a period, perhaps very early in your like early drafts, especially when you're first starting out, where you might need that cheerleading from someone who like maybe like has a discerning eye, but more importantly in this moment is going to encourage you and tell you about all the stuff that they feel like you're doing well and get excited and like giddy over things, because sometimes you need that to be able to like continue on and feel some confidence. But then eventually you really need people on the outside with critical eyes. And I think having someone who's a publishing professional is very different, even from having like a very seasoned beta reader. You know, like somebody who's like, because you might have friends or other writers you know who are very good at giving constructive feedback, critical and otherwise. But somebody who edits for a living is going to have a perspective that's completely different and very valuable.
100%. And it is something that when we're first starting out, you could have gotten away with it years ago when indies first started to become a lot more mainstream. You could get away with not putting your book out with an editor or with a second round of reads, especially even if you were brand new, a whole lot easier. But the truth is, if you're going to be a professional in this business, you need to provide a professional product. And your book, after you have written your baby and you have made it exactly the way you want it, now you need to polish it. It needs to be prettied, and it is a product, and it needs to go out on the shelves professionally.
Yeah.
And if you are just getting started, your book release should not take you less than 6 months if you're just getting started. And I say that it's assuming that you are getting one editor who is going to work with you, who is very good at what they do, and they work with you through the whole process, and you've got a good cover designer. Please don't design your own book covers. Whatever anybody tells you, please don't do that. Don't do that.
Unless you, I would say maybe you could do it if you are a very gifted artist, illustrator, like
It's
person.
not
Like there's
just
certainly
that.
people who have done that, but you have to be at a
I
professional level with that as well.
Yeah, I've done it. I would consider myself a little bit of a graphic designer at this point in time, not when I started. But the one thing a lot of authors do is they don't understand that their book cover is not there to tell their story. It's there to get the reader's attention. And you need your book cover to not say, oh, this character is a perfectly, a redheaded bombshell who's going to wreak havoc in whatever city. You need it to grab emotion and attention. And most authors that I know are like, no, the character must look exactly this way and it must tell exactly this story. And I'm guilty of doing this early on.
No, you guys, book cover is vibes. That's where you can like
Mhm,
ride on vibes. Book cover is
mhm,
vibes. Needs to capture the vibe of your book,
mhm.
get people excited, catch their eye, get people excited, and when they start reading the book, it should match the vibe, like of what
Exactly.
they're expecting. But
It's
it's just
it
vibes, you guys.
exactly. But a lot of us, especially when we're starting out, that's not how we look at it as indies. And it takes an adjustment. This is where being a professional comes in,
Mm.
and learning what a professional standard is comes in. And you could throw any cover on any book and any title and just call it out there and published, and you are now technically a published author. You're not going to make any bestseller lists. You're not going to catch any attention. And if you make pennies, thank your parents, um, or your friends, or whoever bought it. And I'm not trying to sound harsh, but that's exactly what it was for me. It's not
Yeah,
me trying to
yeah.
say this without experience, without
No, you're saying this. You're saying I did this so you don't have to.
Exactly. And I don't want to see other people make those mistakes, so please learn from me. Uh, this is very much a don't do what I did kind of a thing. Because there's so many fabulous storytellers out there that are just not wrapping their book properly, or they're not getting it edited properly. I had a great friend of mine that decided she wanted to work with me on trying to get her book out, and then she went into panic mode. She actually had somebody she contracted to do a great cover, and I think the cover was good, but she went into panic mode and she stuck the book through AI, like the generative AI, to
Oh
try to do some of her edit
man.
before I had a chance to read
Oh.
it. And the very first thing I said to her was, "So did you do this thing?" And she she hasn't really wanted to talk much about it since. I get
Yeah.
I got the feeling that she got embarrassed, and I was trying to tell her a lot of people are doing that. That doesn't mean that your story's no good, because it means that you went the wrong route as far as trying to get this
Right.
cleaned up. Let's work
Just
together
like
on it.
back up. Yeah, just like
Yeah.
back up to where your book was before you
Mhm.
made the mistake of
Mhm.
feeding it to AI. You guys just don't do it for so many reasons.
There
Um
are
it
tools
will ruin your book.
it will. There are a lot of tools that are out there that have been established for a good reason long
Yeah.
ago, and that do the job, that will give you the information you need to be able to clean up your manuscript effectively. I have been using Pro Writing Aid for years. I still absolutely love their offline service, or their on my computer service, whatever downloaded. It gives me regular actual reports. I know what the reading targeted age, the way readability age is. I know how it's flowing, pacing wise, just based off of the way the sentences are structured and backed up. Because these are things that have been built into the system for close to a decade now. So this is a program that I would definitely recommend. You do have to understand that they have since gotten on the AI bandwagon. You do have to pay attention
So
to
many of
what
them have.
services
Yeah.
you
Right,
have to.
like you can't use like Grammarly isn't safe to use anymore.
Mhm.
Um
Yeah, I
uh
find having the downloaded version of Pro Writing Aid has been an asset for me, because I've had it. I still get the reports I need, and these are the reports. Like, I rely on the stuff that has always been there. I'm not using any of their so-called new and fancy suggestions, and
yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
let it recommend sentences to me, because
Mhm.
in theory, we're going to go with theory here. We're not going to go with the. In theory, this generative AI should be able to pick up on context, and it doesn't.
Yeah. Well,
Whereas,
cuz it
so
it can't. It doesn't know
it doesn't,
how. It's not in its toolkit at this time. It is not
and people
actually.
don't
There's no
understand.
I in this AI, you guys.
No, no.
uh I have a tool that I have used, but caveat, I have not used it in a while, so I don't know if it's changed. Um, I used it before all the apps were jumping on AI tools. But an app that I found useful, the downloaded version. There is an online version, but I never used that. But the downloaded version of Hemingway Editor, I used in the past to identify, to like show me where I was, using passive voice, or show me, like to go through and say, here are the things that you've done too much of. Here, look, this chapter has this many instances of passive voice, or this many adverbs, or this many like things you don't want to overdo. And I found that really useful, especially since I write, snarky teenagers who tend to talk that way.
Mm-hmm.
I often have to go back and like clean up and like make my manuscript cleaner and have fewer of those things in it. So that is a tool that I have used, but again, I haven't used it in a while, so I can't 100% guarantee that they have not jumped right on the AI bandwagon because they may have.
You know, I was quite devastated to find out that the online version of Pro Writing Aid is so heavily in that right now. I'm
Yeah.
hoping that they will come back to center because seriously, the program itself is really solid for authors. It takes into account the difference between dialogue, and it was doing that without AI. It didn't need,
Uh huh.
like, the way they had it built. You could run a report on readability, you could report on tensing, you could run reports on adverbs or overused words, and it would give
Mm-hmm.
you as many of your most used words as you requested. I think up to 20. Which really, if you have that many more overused words, um you might maybe revamp the whole thing, but that's a whole nother discussion for another podcast.
And you won't, I'm telling you, you won't realize that you're overusing them. So my book got all the way like through like rounds of developmental edits and line edits with my agent, with 2 agents. And when I got into, when I finally was like doing edits with my editor at Page Street,
Mhm.
they were like, okay, you use the word spectacular this many times. Could you cut a few of them out? And like, so you're not gonna realize it. You're not gonna realize that you're overusing these words, and it can take it can like go through numerous sets of eyes before someone recognizes something like that sometimes. So um yeah.
Which is why it's 100% valid to still use the programs. You just have to recognize what tools apply to what.
Yeah, just be really careful. Yeah.
Uh, like I said, I'm still using Pro Writing Aid. I'm just not using any of their sentence suggestions. I'm running all the reports.
Mm.
Pretty much all the reports they've always offered. I think it's like 25 or 30 possible reports that help you to clean up your manuscript effectively.
And I would say in general, just general advice, and I'm saying this from the traditional publishing
Mhm.
viewpoint, and having, my agency, the head of the agency that I'm with, is on the committee that deals with things like AI, for the agents guild, with the name of which is not coming to me all of a sudden, like but anyway, the professional organization for literary agents. um they and we were told, like, do not use any of these tools that might feed your book into an LLM, like,
Mhm.
at all. Like, if you're gonna run something, it has to run like on your device.
Mhm.
Don't use something that runs online because they have your stuff then. Because it could like mess up your opportunity to even get a contract. Like, if you used those tools, you
Mhm.
could actually screw up your future publishing contract, by having used them. So just really be careful. Obviously, in indie publishing, like, nobody's there to cancel your contract if they find out that you used this, but uh, it's still just a really bad idea.
Well,
Just be very careful about the programs you use, and try to run
there
them on device.
there are a lot of other consequences, even as an indie, if you
Hmm.
aren't careful, because they're still trying to figure out how to regulate this industry.
Yeah.
And as crazy as this sounds, it's got to hit its bubble and burst before people start actually figuring out what they're doing with it. We're getting there.
Yeah.
But that's the truth. Whenever there's a new technology, people don't really know what they're doing with it. It's like throwing spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. And unfortunately, there's usually casualties, if you will. And that can be your
Hmm.
writing if you're not careful. And that doesn't matter whether you're indie or traditional. And you definitely are not going to want to put yourself in a position where stuff can become problematic in the future, because it may not be an issue today, but you might
Right.
be looking at somebody else puts out a book very similar to yours, And I don't just mean like you
with
had
exact
to,
sentences,
right.
even.
And it could be similar plot points. And I've talked about this many times on my channel,
Oh, of course.
where it's like I can give MJ and I can have the exact same plot goal, and it will read two very different ways because we
Right.
both have very different voices.
Right. We would write completely different books given the same, I would say you could even give us like the same rough outline, not a detailed outline, but a rough outline, and our books would be completely different when we finished them.
100%.
There's no there's nothing new under the sun when it comes to plot, and it's your voice that is unique and belongs to you only.
So, this is, so this is what I'm saying. As far as, that goes, keep it in mind when you are getting ready to do this stuff. But like I said, with me, I've stuck to just the reports on Pro Writing Aid because it's been an asset for me all of this time. I'm not ready to say to give up the app. I'm just not going to use all the things that are going to be the things. But that's a matter of being judicious about the choices you're making, and then adjusting for the environment you have. You, as an indie, might be able to get your book out to my best. We're going to say best here. We're going to air quote this. Character would do air quotes. My best published year, if you will. I put out 3 full-length novels and a boat ton of short stories. I don't remember how many. There was a lot. And I think a couple of novellas. We'll discuss. We're going to have to do an episode on book length and industry.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, word count and stuff.
But roughly expect for this conversation, short stories are anything under 20,000 words, and novellas are between that and 50.
And like 50, yeah.
And bear in mind, when I say, since I write predominantly in science fiction, that means most of my books are actually longer. Like they tend to average about 80,000 words because that's not only industry standard, but if you ever try to write a science fiction story, a full-length novel shorter than 80,000 words, you are the most commended, accomplished, distinct author I have ever met.
or you're leaving out a lot of world building that is going to come back and bite you in the end.
Yeah. You don't want to do that.
No.
Science fiction and fantasy are kind of overlap in that regard.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Right. When you need a lot of extra world building, anything in the speculative range is expected that you could have a higher word count.
And they're fully accepted.
Than something else. Yeah. We'll do an episode on that at some point.
But if you're sitting here at 6 months and you have a good sense about what you did, you finished your book. Now this is 6 months from the end of the book, by the way, guys. So you finished your book, you put it to the editor, you get it through the editor in a couple of months. While it's at the editor, you have to start your marketing. You might think I'm silly, but I'm not. If you want to publish it in 6 months and actually see results, you need to start your marketing. And we'll do an episode of what that means.
Soon. I think we should do one soon.
Yes. But it can be done. It absolutely can be done in 6 months. It can be done in 3 in reality. But in that situation, you need to have a good, succinct rhythm. You need to know what you're doing. You probably have a backlist. You're not a brand new author. Don't do that to yourself. There's no point. There is no business. There is no nothing that you should possibly do to yourself or work for anybody else that turns your sanity into a secondary thought process. You need to be realistic. And I was not initially. I saw the results of not being realistic. So I'm telling you from experience, don't try to release a book a month unless you literally have everything set up to be able to do that professionally. And most of us don't when we're first starting out. So don't do that to yourself.
And in traditional publishing, expect that your debut is going to take, is going to come out, anywhere from 1 to 3 years after you actually get the offer for it. And eventually you can build up multiple contracts where you have more than one book coming out a year. But you're going to have to be careful to make sure that your deadlines aren't running into each other, that that the schedule that you're working with each publisher can be compatible with each other and the timeline that you have available, so that you don't screw up your contracts too. So but there's a lot of waiting in traditional publishing, and that wait can definitely be worthwhile, but it's not going to be fast, whatever you're doing. And I think that's
Communicate all the way through.
Yeah.
MJ's got a second book coming after this one, which is
I
beautiful.
do. April 2027.
Which is awesome, by the way, everyone. So if you haven't already, go down to the comment section, look for the link, order the book. You'll be glad you did.
Thank you, Catrina. And you guys should also go over to Catrina's website and check her absolutely, disgustingly huge catalog. And pick some place to start and just get some books.
Just sign up for the newsletter and I'll give you a free one.
Or that.
As a matter of fact, you can start looking for our newsletter in the comments or in the descriptions and everything on all the platforms here in the next couple of weeks. And you will get previews of our writing there at some point as well, if not right away.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We'll be back and see you guys again in a couple more weeks.
Love you. See you in the next one, guys.
Bye.